don't know where I was.
No,
Was it?
biopsy, madam. We're talking about suction mucosal biopsy.
The sexual mucosal biopsies. Okay. So they are, I'm sure it would be good either ways for ACHE or calretinine, but there's
Okay.
nothing wrong in giving it a try.
Madam, what is we will start doing it normal biopsy so that we can validate first. Then we can start doing the rest books.
Yes,
Then
yes, definitely. It needs
the biopsy,
validation.
I will
Yeah.
get the suction biopsy apparatus from Wilson. I'll get it organized. I'll discuss with you about the methods, and we'll start doing for normal patients. I mean, where we are doing anesthesia for some other patient, we'll also take a suction biopsy, send it a few times till it is validated. Once you're sure, then
Okay.
we'll start Hirschsprungs anyway. Or those patients where you're doing a regular biopsy also, we'll do this and the regular biopsy. Once you
Okay.
say it is validated, perhaps we can go ahead with it, madam.
Yeah, we could do that. We could validate and make things easier. That is
Yes.
one. And number two is ACHE always needs frozen, so they need to book it with us beforehand. Um, because we need to be available and make sure the department is open, lab is open, holidays and other things come. So we need 1 day's notice.
Yes,
Whereas
madam. I
for
think that they are
yeah,
doing already. Continue to do that.
yes, yes. And the calretinine, yes, the IHC, we would do it free of cost as far as the grants take care of it. So far, we have grants, so we will make it available for all your patients. So as of now, we have not been charging, but the department does for cases like from, you know, those who can afford to and things like that. But from the grants, we have always done it free. So please do not send your patients to pay for calretin until I give a closing, my grants, whatever the period is over, and that it's not available. I think it will take over for another 6 months, so we should not have an issue. And regarding the other enzymes, LDH and NADPH and SDH, they are very interesting diagnostic, not so research-oriented enzyme protocols, but they are not feasible for a routine diagnostic purpose. So I don't want to stress much on it and have that in your mind, but it's good to know that ACHE always, when it is positive, calretinine has to be negative to call it Hirschsprung's. That is, they are inversely proportional. So increased ACHE, calretinine will be 0 for a diagnosis of Hirschsprung's. So in a normal child, acetylcholinesterase activity is not increased and the calretin fibers are well seen. So just stressing the point that they are inversely proportional. So the point is, so when we say a particular section or a biopsy has no staining with calretinine, so the pathologist makes it 100% proof that the technique is correct. It's not that somewhere one step is missed out in staining, that we have no staining. And number two is tissue must be well fixed in formalin. Sometimes when the tissue is not well fixed, we have no fibers being stained. Whereas acetylcholinesterase, being an enzyme, is more sturdier, though we say it's a temperature, um, what do you call it? It's viable only up to 37. If it goes to 40 degrees, say if the temperature, or you by chance, if or you put in formalin, the ACHE is lost. So we cannot do acetylcholinesterase histochemistry on rectal biopsies which are fixed in formalin, or it is processed in histokinate. That means it goes to a temperature of 60 degrees during processing to get a section. So on those tissues, we cannot do acetylcholinesterase. So many times we get a request, please do acetylcholinesterase on this paraffin block. So I write back to say, sorry, I cannot do acetylcholinesterase on a paraffin block because the tissue in it has gone through processing of 60 degrees and above. So to get tissues that are not exposed to heat, not fixed in formalin, because protein, enzyme, etc. should not be degraded. So we want fresh tissue. So calretinine has a lot of importance, or much more, maneuverability, because it can be done on all formalin fixed biopsies. And it does not matter at what level is the tissue is being taken. So we don't look whether the tissue is below splenic flexure or not. So it's applicable anyway, any part of the GI system, to assess whether it is ganglionated or not. So, so calretinine we do not do on full thickness biopsies, because we get to see the matrix plexus. So acetylcholinesterase plays an important role on mucosal biopsies. Calretinine also works beautifully on all mucosal biopsies, irrespective of the site of biopsy. If there's any doubt on this or any discussion on this, most welcome.
No, thank you.
Okay. Now, seromuscular biopsies, yes. I somewhere read that should be a minimum of 1 centimeter length. We don't see that really happening, because in a newborn, you don't get to have 1 centimeter. But what we see is seromuscular, because the muscle shrinks, it takes a shape of a C for,
Yes,
so that is how we identify the adequacy of seromuscular. But if you don't take a real good seromuscular biopsy, it doesn't curl if it has got one layer of the muscle. That means only longitudinal if you have, or only the outermost layer of the muscle, then we won't be sampling the matrix plexus. So
yes, sir.
the thickness of seromuscular is important to sample the matrix plexus, and that is all. Yeah, and the way you send it across to us, starting from the distal end and going proximally, is just ideal. I know, and there are no issues. I think even the newcomers will know that we start sampling from the rectum and go proximally. So, and that indicated on the colon map would facilitate better grossing and better interpretation by the pathologist.
Yes, madam.
Madam, can you
And
also
one-
elaborate fixing the, the method to send the biopsy? Because I remember, I can see the evolution from the time on our MCH days, we used to put it in a suture pack, so make it very sort of stabilize, stretch it. Some people used to put it on a needle. Some people used to sort of stick it on a paper, tissue paper, so that it so that the processing becomes easier. What is it that you prefer, madam?
No, I just want that tissue to be just dropped in formalin, nothing
Okay.
else. Provided you want it to be formalin fixed processing. But if you need for frozen, it has to be normal saline soaked gauze and sent across. And that time you can put it on a paper or on a wet tissue, gauze. It should be wet. Otherwise, the soft, the biopsy of the muscle will stick on to the dry fiber of the gauze, and it's very difficult to separate the two. So anything that you put, the tissue must be wet so that they don't stick to each other, but well wrapped so that we don't lose the tissue. Okay.
Yes, madam.
But I don't want it to be stretched at all. I
Okay.
don't want it. Yeah, nothing at all.
One
Yeah.
about calretinine, ma'am. The viability of the biopsy, as in if the biopsy should not. What do they mean, ma'am? Actually, do they say that it should not be left without processing for a long time? Is it like that? Or,
No, what I mean is the viability of the biopsy is probably that some ways, sometimes what happens, biopsy is taken and it is left not in formalin, it's left in a petri dish or whatever on a gauze piece outside without formalin. So we don't want that to happen.
yes, ma'am.
And yeah, it's just that it should be well fixed in formalin. So as soon as you take the biopsy, drop it in formalin, provided you have decided that yes, this is going for routine processing.
Yes.
Okay. But if the biopsy is going for frozen, you send it to us in saline soap gauze, and after we cut the frozen, it automatically goes into formalin for the next.
Excellent.
But only one point that I want to stress with regard to seromuscular biopsy is people have a notion that yes, this seromuscular biopsy has sampled the Meyntrich plexus and it is good enough to assess the innervation of the entire circumference. But that is not correct. You know, we have had solid arguments with the surgeons sometimes when they said, see, you gave a report on this seromuscular biopsy at this level, saying it is ganglionated. And hence, I have taken the pull through, whatever anastomosis, from that point and downwards. And when sent at that time during the pull through for innovation studies, we have said that donut is, 3/4 aganglionic and not suitable for anastomosis. And then they have said, how can it be you call a seromuscular biopsy at that level ganglionic? So I've gone with the impression that because you said it is ganglionic, I have taken that area for anastomosis. So, but you should remember that circumference, the whole, and seromuscular biopsy is one point in that circumference. And when we know at this, yes, in this slide, you see the migration of the neural crest cells. It is not uniform. You see the dark colored area is the ganglionic the neural crest cells front, okay? It's migrating with the leading edge. So in the 12 o'clock point, yes, the ganglion cells have reached. But if you look at 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 9 o'clock, your ganglion cells have not reached. So if you have had a biopsy at this point at 12 o'clock, seromuscular biopsy, and if I call this ganglionic, you should never assume that the entire circumference is ganglionic because of the physiology of the neural crest migration. It is never uniform. That is why we need to have a 4-quadrant assessment of the donut for you or for the child to have a good, well innervated anastomotic site.
Yes, ma'am.
The point is very well illustrated. We take the point very clearly. But my problem is only one place where a donut is feasible if you're doing colostomy or when you're doing a pull through. But if you're doing a
Okay.
routine seromuscular biopsies, a donut is
Okay.
not feasible. So in such cases, can we take a seromuscular biopsy in 4 quadrants?
No, I still not feel comfortable about that. But if all 4 quadrants are ganglionic, but if you would go 5 centimeters proximal to it, maybe that it may be okay. We should do and try it out with whether we can take such a shortcut.
No, I agree, madam. We will do a donut whenever, for example, if it is a colostomy, we can send a
Yes.
donut. And if we're
Yeah.
pulling through, we send a donut, no question at all. But the point
Okay.
is, there are places where we can't keep taking donut at every level because the donut is where we're going to transect the bowel. So it has to be a
Okay.
decision. So
Okay.
I understand where we do colostomy, we'll do, where we do pull through, we'll do. But rest of the places,
Okay.
perhaps, instead of just a seromuscular biopsy at one place, maybe we just do it at tinea coli. Maybe you can do it at least 4 quadrants in the place where we suspect who is likely to be the aganglionic or ganglionic area, which is more
Okay.
critical.
Yeah. And are you going to mark those sites or send separately or put them all together saying
Yes,
that it's all
we have
at
to.
one level?
We have to, madam.
Yeah.
What I will do is I
Because
will also discuss Gauri and others and
yeah,
about evolving protocol. Then we'll discuss with you and we'll take it forward, madam.
yeah, we will do that. And one thing is all these seromuscular are anti-mesenteric, right?
Yes, madam. Yes, most of the
Yeah.
times, yes.
Most of the time anti-mesenteric because the neural crest cells migrate along the blood vessels. So they come via the mesenteric end and then they go round circumferential. So we assume that the last part to get innervated is the anti-mesenteric. And hence, that's always with a silk line, silk suture to say, yes, this is anti-mesenteric for us to get to assess the donut.
Yes, madam. In fact, you put it right because that is the other argument which used to be said that if you're going to send by as anti-mesenteric side, if it is positive, the rest of the things are positive. But again, I understand there can be variations.
Yeah.
So it's the idea thing.
Yeah, yeah. So we have two ends. We have horizontal and a vertical. So both should be considered here of the migration. Yeah.
Agreed. Please go ahead.
And the other one is the ultra short, so-called ultra short Hirschsprungs. You know, the word ultra short is now getting replaced as very short Hirschsprungs.
Yes, ma'am.
So that is why if you look at the protocol of ERICA, you know, or even earlier, many of the papers said you can't take one rectal biopsy. You need to take at least 3, 4 so that you have sampled different areas, probably to avoid very short Hirschsprungs. That is all. So how do we overcome that is probably only this. And of course, I think the best clinical assessment for you to do is the rectoanal inhibitory reflex. I think if you put your finger, press it on the anal sphincter, and if it opens up, it's very likely that it is normal. And if it does not, you know, it is not, it is likely to be Hirschsprungs. So there's one small clue that many people talk about it, but sampling 3, 4 rectal biopsies, I don't know it's how feasible it is for you all, but other people try to take it at different levels along the rectum, starting from 4, 3 to 1 centimeter. But so far in our 22 years, we have realized that one rectal biopsy has been good enough to diagnose if appropriately taken 2 centimeter. But if your other parameters like barium and recto RA reflex and this don't go hand in hand with the histopathology, then you should suspect very short Hirschsprungs.
Madam, my question is, how frequent is this? Because frankly, early in my career, I never believed there is something called as ultra short segment Hirschsprungs. But I had at least 3, 4 cases, including last one, I think one child by name Swami, whom you have done it. A biopsy which was positive for Hirschsprungs, but after the biopsy, the child became completely asymptomatic and passing normal stools. So I don't know, but how frequently in a practice have you seen this very short segment Hirschsprungs, madam?
No, we have had recently, I think about a month ago, we had a biopsy from an 18-year-old boy,
Okay.
you know, who has been going up and down for his constipation, and his rectal biopsy has been ganglionic, okay? It had ganglion cells. So they were wondering, how do we go about this? So we have a rectal biopsy which is ganglionated, but his abdomen wouldn't get so distended, but his rectum is loaded with feces
Okay.
and very unusual. His growth is a little stunted, but his manometry was 0. Okay, there was hardly anything happening. So what we did was a myectomy was done, and with the ACHE done on that, we could show that there was increased activity of acetylcholinesterase in the submucosa and in the superficial muscle layer. And after that surgery, the patient is doing extremely well. So now the question is very short Hirschsprungs versus internal anal sphincter achalasia. You know, some of the books put the two as synonymous, but they are not. We consider as very short Hirschsprungs when it is aganglionic in that small area, which we may not be microscopically also demonstrate, but they do well, as you say, with a simple mucosal biopsy, where there is a little cut of the muscle could solve the problem. But internal anal sphincter, the sphincter is very taut and that has to undergo myomectomy to and assessed. So that internal anal sphincter needs surgery, and the reflex here will will help you to diagnose better. But microscopy will prove that in internal anal sphincter, the rectal mucosal biopsy is ganglionic.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Intestinal neuron, TCA word of caution. Yes, I thought so that it is something which dupes anyone. Gross and micro and presentation may not go hand in hand for a definite diagnosis of TCA. So you should always keep this mind of TCA when you are looking at a child with any of the current motility. Yeah. But when it comes to intestinal neuronal dysplasia, it's a diagnosis which we very rarely make possible on a routine histopathology. But we have had one very well demonstrated case about 6 months ago where the child had Hirschsprung's and all the entire proximal segment thereafter,
Yes.
had shown ganglion cells, which are so many in number in each ganglion, and had an unusual location of these ganglion cells. And the age of the child is also very important. The child should be older than 1 year of age. Here in the criteria, they said 4 years, but invariably the child has to be more than 1 year. So that is a very unusual intestinal neuronal dysplasia. But one thing is surgery plays no part in this. I don't know how you're going to manage this child. They have been giving the surgeon, this is from Coimbatore, they have been treating this child with neostigmine and the patient does well. The moment he stops, again, he goes into the same problem. But his Hirschsprung's aganglionic segment has been removed. He has undergone a proper pull-through. But unfortunately, the proximal, the anostomose, the entire segment is having this kind of a morphology where there are ganglion cells, more than 7, 8 in number in each, and they're huge. They are mega giant cells. And the point is, we do not know its proximal extent. So if you say, I'm going to resect this area, but you don't know how far it has, its limits are. So how much are you going to resect? And hence surgery is not indicated in IND as per the cases, we look in the literature. So it's a very rare diagnosis to be handled very carefully. And to be very, very, that's what they go on with chronic constipation into adulthood. I suppose they have to be medically treated.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So if you have any doubts at any point, please feel to call on the phone regarding your cases. And all your reports, I thought especially the calretinine reports would be mailed to, I think Dr. Gauri Shankar has agreed to take it on his mail and give it to you all.
Yes,
So is that okay?
Yes.
Or if you have any other email IDs? But
Perfectly
yeah.
okay. No issues.
Yeah.
We wish to sincerely thank all your input and our support to us, your support to us for so many years. And we really gone leaps and bounds with your input, madam. Thank you very much and looking forward to support in future.